I want to share a moment that happened yesterday at the Newark airport in the middle of all of those delays and gate changes, that has kept me going for the last 12 hours. I don't even know where I'm at now, 16 hours. I'm still in the same clothes that I left LA at 4 o'clock yesterday morning because my flight was delayed 7 times. The gate changed 4 times. I was supposed to leave at 7:30 Eastern time. I didn't leave till 12:45. I got back on the ground in Maine at 2 o'clock this morning, slept for 4 hours, and then immediately had to drive 2 hours north for an appointment. So I am about to shut this phone off and take a nap before I turn around and go home. Like, home, finally. But this moment was just so cool, and it has really had me thinking about when you have the presence of mind to take a breath and put things in perspective, that little shift can make such a big difference. So chaos sort of unfolded at Newark yesterday thanks to a line of thunderstorms went through the East Coast, and as our flight from LA landed, they were canceling flights just all over the place. And so it created this big ripple effect. Everybody was sort of ready to complain and all that. Like, it was out of everyone's control. So it was kind of ridiculous that people were so upset. But then it kind of got crowded and there was nowhere to sit. I noticed a woman sitting on there was this funny row of almost like chaise lounges, but just a connected row of them. So there were some people sitting and there was one seat available, but she had all of her luggage on the seat. So I gently approached and said, would it be all right if I sat here? And she begrudgingly, like, kind of looked at me, and you could tell, like, she was on the edge of not being kind, but something in her, like, she kind of grabbed her stuff. She's like, well, I don't really want to sit next to strangers. And I'm thinking, like, I could have gone the other way too. Like, I was thinking a lot of things in my own head that I could have said, but refrained from saying. And she was like, I have a bad attitude and I'm in a bad mood or something. And in my head, it was like one of those split decisions that I didn't even really consciously think. But in my head, I was like, I can control where this is going. And I said, I just sat down and said, well, maybe I can change that. And in my head, I'm like, well, who the hell am I? But I was trying to do my best to make light of a situation. And so we got talking, she started to soften a little bit and was venting some of her frustration. And the 2 women next to her, I thought they were all traveling together, but they actually weren't. Apparently, maybe they had just been talking. And but the 3 of them were all sort of right on the edge of being pretty heated. And I said, let me ask you something. I said, are you coming or going? Like, are you going somewhere? Are you at the beginning of your trip, or are you coming home from your trip? And they all kind of stopped for a second and they said, oh, we're going home. And I said, what were you here for? And the other 2 women said, we were here for a funeral. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And I said, let me ask you something. Like, what would have happened if this delay had happened on your trip out? And all 3 of them went, oh. And they all, like, their expressions changed, their body language changed, everything changed, and they lightened, like their faces lightened, their body, everything just sort of softened, and they were like, oh. And if we talked for a few more minutes, and the 3rd woman over, she was maybe 20. She was quite young. She just sat up and she looks at me and she goes, you are just a light. And I was like, well, in my head, I'm like, well, I don't know about that. But in the moment, it was just, we all needed it, I think. I needed it. Like, I was on the verge of going down that road. And I made a choice, not even conscious, but in that moment when the grumpy woman who didn't want to move her luggage for some reason decided maybe I was okay and she moved her luggage, like, little things happened and we both made different choices. We both were headed in, I think, bad directions with our moods. We both unconsciously or otherwise made a choice to to not fall into that negative path. And we ended up having a lovely conversation and kind of shifting each other's perspectives on what could have been a crappy situation. And in light of my day before, if you followed my stories, I just went out and about in LA by myself, which for me was a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, in my 20s, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But as a parent and an adult, you have to think twice about what you do. But I had an amazing day the day before in LA. One of those days that just everything unfolded in a way that I could not have predicted, but was so special and wonderful. And there was a piece of me that was like, I am not going to let whatever is happening right now in the Newark airport take any of that away from me. And is also very aware of the fact that this delay could have happened at the beginning of my trip and it would have changed everything. So I was grateful for the fact that it happened on the end of my trip. And I was grateful for the fact that I wasn't on a plane flying through a thunderstorm. Like, thank you for making decisions to keep me safe. So trying to just rephrase all of those little moments in a way that, you can choose to be upset or frustrated about it, or you can take a breath and look at the big picture and find a way to reframe it in a more positive way. And I hope that helps you today. I'm going to go take a nap.